Hey everybody, Jeff here. Today I want to talk about my top 7 video must-haves. Of course, I handle a lot of the video content here at RMSP, and there's little gizmos over time when I do my own independent film projects that I've started to realize, as an independent filmmaker, video maker, little things that just have made my videos better, make my life easier, and I wanted to share some of those with you. So must-have number 1, ND filter. Here's an example of a 4-stop ND. This one's just made by Hoya. I recommend looking at all your lenses and getting the biggest one that you can, and then just buying step-down rings, because those step-down rings are cheaper than if you were to continue to buy filters themselves. You could just use one big filter and use that on all the other accessories. You have to look at things like, am I using a lens hood? Do I have a matte box? Stuff like that. That'll help dictate, your particular setup and if that'll work. But if you're not dealing with any of that, you could just get the biggest filter that you can for the largest lens diameter that you have, and then just get step-down rings for the smaller ones. But in some cases, you might be dealing with a scenario where you don't want to have a filter on your lens. In this scenario, I have the Sony a7S II, but most of my other camera systems are Canon, and I've had tons of Canon glass. I really just picked up the Sony a7S II as a camera body that I could put on a gimbal, but with that, in the log settings, the lowest ISO that I can be at is ISO 1600. So with that, I got this Visualex Sony E ND. It's a variable ND, and it allows me to dial in a certain amount of neutral density before the lens, essentially. And that enables me to get wider and open apertures. In this case, I have an older 35mm Canon lens that's been adapted to it just because it has nice coatings on it. I like the glass on it. But an ND filter of some kind is really what you're going to need if you want to get those wider open apertures shooting at 50th of a shutter speed, ISO 100, especially if you're outside on a sunny day. All right, so my next must-have are cinema lenses. Now, you don't have to get, there's a lot of variety of cinema lenses out there. There's some really cheapies, some sort of middle of the road, and then there's sort of the real high end. So here's a 16mm Samyang lens. This is an 85mm Samyang lens. And what's nice about these lenses is that not only do they have when you mount them, you'll find that the aperture information is actually off to the side. These are T-stop lenses, not f-stop lenses. And it's nice because in some scenarios with video cameras, such as this one that is filming me right now, it's actually up fairly high. And if I'm using a lens that has all the information at the top, I then have to get on an Apple box or a small ladder in order to look down on it. But with these cinema lenses, the information is off to the side, allowing me to just come to the side of the camera and see the information that I need. They're also nice because they have declicked aperture rings, so they're real smooth. They're also built to be able to take follow focus gears, so you can get a follow focus rig and attach it and be able to control your lens with a follow focus. So there's definitely some cheapies out there like Chinon and Mikey and some of these other brands that are pretty inexpensive for these little cinema lenses. These are the Samyang and Rokinon series that are kind of middle of the road, I think. Certainly you can get up into like Cooke lenses, Canon, Nikon, some of these higher end cinema lenses that you'd be blown away if you saw some of the prices on those. I would be willing to bet in a lot of the sorts of projects that use those level of lenses, they're probably renting them and not buying them. I even kind of went out and found some old Canon FD mount lenses, and there's a guy up outside of Toronto in Canada I found who machines the EF mount, and I actually was able to buy some of these cheap older Canon lenses that have some coatings on them, remove the FD mount, and put his machined EF mount on it, allowing me to use some of these older, I have a 50 and I have a 35, these older FD mount Canon lenses, which are kind of fun for video. They're not quite sharp enough to do still photography with, but I do like their look, and I do sort of kind of have an older vibe to them on video. All right, so my next must-have is some sort of loop. If you're a DSLR shooter of any kind and you're outside on a sunny day, it is really hard if you don't have any kind of like focus assist on certain cameras. It's really hard to see if you're sharp or what your exposure is. But getting just a basic loop, these are really helpful even for still photography, where you can, be outside on a bright day and look at the image and darken everything else out. Super helpful. So I would recommend, if you're shooting with DSLR video, pick up one of these cheap, this is just like a Hoodman style. You want to know if your shot is sharp and well exposed, and if you're outside on a bright sunny day, it can be sometimes hard to tell that without having some sort of ability to blank out all of that bright light. My next must-have is a light. You know, it goes overlooked a lot of the times. A lot of folks will pick up some of these Sony cameras and man, they have really great ISO, you know, ability to raise the ISO super high, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that footage is gonna like look great. But once you start utilizing lights, in our case, I have this softbox that's lighting me and it's got a grid baffle on it, just helping to control some of the spill. If you were to take, for example, if I were to turn that light off and just turn the lights on in the room, you can see the quality difference. So here's with just the lights on in the room. You can see how much work that key light was doing. And, you know, now I've got, you know, just these overhead fluorescent lights that are kind of lighting down in the scene, not really lighting me at all. And so if you're relying upon the lighting that's in a particular space versus bringing in your own light, can be problematic. Man, it's what a difference it makes to have lighting on your scene as opposed to just trying to rely upon what's in the room, particularly overhead fluorescence. You can see I got now a little kicker light coming in from the side, and we use these Genere LEDs. They're really inexpensive. They have a pretty okay CRI. You know, if you in a pinch, you could always add a little, if you're getting any kind of color casts, you could add a little gel to it if you needed to. But these have served us pretty well in here for these sorts of scenarios. There's a lot of information out there about the different kinds of lights, different brands, things like that. But that would be a must-have, in my opinion, for shooting video, is a light. Another must-have, I think, would be a gimbal of some kind. This is a Feiyu Crane 2. Camera sits on this little platform here, as you can see. This was an older model where I had to sort of rig my own little tripod base using some Manfrotto plate and this little mini tripod kind of connected. You know, which is nice because it gives me the ability when I'm out and about to be able to take it off of the tripod base, but then bring it back over and set the camera down, lock it down, and it sits on its own. A lot of the newer models have this built into it now, so that's something to consider. But I think a gimbal really can improve the quality of your footage, provided you're not using too big of a lens on the end of the thing. Another video must-have is a tripod. You know, if you're trying to just hand hold everything, you're going to be dealing with a lot of shakiness. If you're trying to rely upon things like warp stabilizer and all that, you know, it starts to become noticed, particularly with really shaky footage. You know, and it mixes up your shots. It's good to have some locked down shots on tripod, mixing that in with gimbal shots. If your whole video is gimbal, it starts to feel a little gimmicky, versus mixing it up where you have some locked down tripod shots. It gives you the pans, gives you the tilts. I prefer my fluid tripod heads to have half balls on them. I don't like the flat base tripod head. Gives me a lot more adjustability and for leveling my camera out really quickly. But that would be, I think, one of those necessary tools as somebody who's getting into video to get yourself a good video tripod. And the last item on my must-have lists for those who are getting into video is some sort of audio equipment. There's a large variety of audio equipment available out there, from very inexpensive all the way on up to prices that would knock your socks off. You know, probably at the lower end would be something like the Zoom H1N with a little lav mic, you know, if you're doing some sort of interview. It's going to improve the quality of your video so much more to have some level of good audio, not just the microphone that's on the camera. Some folks like these Rode Video Mic Pros, and you know, these microphones are actually strangely pretty good, provided that they are about 12 to 16 inches away from the sound source. But if they're really far away, they're not that much better than what you have on your camera already. It's going to be kind of hissy. You know, there's probably some self noise. You're going to pick up a lot of room noise if it's mounted to the top of the camera and the camera's far away. And now if your camera is in close on somebody, you know, within a couple feet, it's certainly going to be much better in the little shotgun mode than what the microphone that's on your camera. But, you know, these sound pretty good if you can rig them on some sort of boom or like a C-stand arm overhead and get them in closer like a traditional boom mic. They're not too bad sounding. It's just that they come with a cold shoe and people want to put that on their camera and then they're far away and it starts picking up room noise and it doesn't sound all that great. There's certainly other brands out there, and sort of like the more you start spending, the more features you get. You know, for example, the Tascam DR10L, you know, it's a very small little unit. It's nice because it will record a dual track, the second track being a little quieter, attenuated as they call it, and it's got a little screw-in lavalier microphone. You know, this is coming up to more of the 200, 250 price range. You know, you get your lav mic on the person. And these are pretty nice little recorders, and they record a decent little file. Are they super pro audio level? Definitely not. But will they be much better than the microphone that's on your camera? Absolutely. When you start getting into scenarios where you need more than one microphone going on at the same time, that's where things start getting tricky. And when you start getting into scenarios of 3 or 4 microphones, or where you need wireless microphones, or you need boom microphones, that's when you start to have to either invest in learning about how to operate that kind of equipment, the kinds of mics that you would need, indoor mics, outdoor mics, wireless mics, wired mics. You know, are there any other directors or producers on set? Do they need a feed of what you're recording into headphones? Okay, well then they need wireless devices, so you're sending your mix out to them. That starts getting more complicated. And honestly, when you start going down that road as an independent filmmaker, it might be in your best interest to hire a sound person, because they are worth their weight in gold. They will bring a kit that is tailored to the needs of the shoot, the kinds of things that are needed. And it's one less thing that you have to worry about. You now have somebody on set who's making it their responsibility to capture great sound for you and sync that with a variety of different types of technology to your footage, making your life in post-production that much easier. So when in doubt, hire a pro. You can check out my video here on what I carry in my sound bag, the kinds of things get you thinking about what it would take if you wanted to get into miking up more people, or going outside on windy days and dealing with high wind situations, and the kinds of scenarios that an independent videographer runs into when it comes to working with professional audio. So these have been my must-haves for improving your video quality. We've looked at ND filters, whether it's the screw-on kind or a variable ND adapter that you can put between your lens and camera body. We've looked at these declicked cinema lenses, whether you can buy them or maybe find older ones and get different kinds of mounts for your camera. I think having some sort of gimbal stabilizer is a great option for being able to get some follow shots and have some stabilization, get that sort of Steadicam look, you know. A tripod, video tripod, specifically with a video fluid head on it, preferably the kind that has a half ball as opposed to the flat base. Some kind of loop for those DSLR mirrorless shooters. It can be hard to judge exposure and focus if you don't have any kind of focus assist features on your camera. So get yourself a cheapy loop. I think this one was like 15 bucks. You stick that on the back of the camera on a bright sunny day and you can see your focus and exposure at that point. A light, don't forget to light the scene. Don't expect the sun to be amazing that day, and don't expect the lights in a particular environment to do what they need to do for you. And man, if you're shooting some sort of interview by daylight and the clouds decide to show up, it's going to change your exposure. Things can get weird. Light the scene. Don't be afraid to invest in some lighting. It really makes a difference, as you can see in this video. And then some sort of way to get better audio on your video. Whether you're putting a lavalier mic on somebody and recording that way, whether you're going wireless, whether you're putting a microphone on the camera, getting the camera in closer, or if you want to step up to more professional equipment where you're looking at boom mics, interior boom mics, exterior boom mics, shotgun mics, wireless technology, and the kinds of mixers and recorders that you would need in order to get the best quality sound and be able to sync that sound in post later to your video. All the various technology involved. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, you know what to do. You can subscribe up there or down there. Hit the little bell to be notified. Thanks to Canon for providing some of the equipment to make these videos possible. Thanks for watching.